in the frontier. And so death was always there, always there.
Now, this is where you were jumping ahead. What do Westerns tell us about our society?
To sum it up, I think the great summation of it would be the film High Noon, where society at large is basically cowardly and or corrupt. And there's a point that when it comes down to a battle between good and evil, you really can't trust other people that much. You have to take on these wars yourself. So you have the lone cowboy riding into town. And I don't know if you've seen High Noon, but Gary Cooper plays a marshal in this town, and word arrives that three outlaws, one of them has been released from prison, two other gang members, they're coming back to this town to wreak revenge, and particularly to kill the marshal who sent them away. And at the point, Gary Cooper's marshal character, he has no deputies or anything. And in fact, he's about to get married and hang up the job. But the town is facing this threat. And so he tries to get support from the town to help him meet these outlaws. And they won't do it. It's either through cowardliness or greed or other forms of corruption. They just decide not to do it, and so it ends up him alone. And that's kind of a theme of the West, is that Western is that at some point it's you alone. It's Clint Eastwood out there, taking on those bad guys without allies. And that's what happens to Gary Cooper. And then he does shoot the three guys or four guys, however many were involved. And the town asks him to stay and, do all of these things. And he takes the badge off and throws it in the dirt and then gets in the carriage and leaves. And I think that kind of epitomizes what the Western says about society, and that it's almost a libertarian point of view about you have to take care of yourself, and then you have to take care of your family, and you can't depend on the government or anything like that to help you out. It's pretty much you against the world.
Well put. No, I haven't seen. I gotta go see High Noon again. I haven't seen it in a while. Now,
High Noon's well worth watching.
All right. No, there's a lot to watch. It was a funny thing when I was writing out questions. I was reading Claude Pellieu's Jukeboxes, and he had this funny. It struck me as a funny line. It's not really funny, but it's just the desert. He wrote, "The desert is a forbidden zone, and visions penetrate to the heart of that absence." Is that
interesting?
It's funny that line found me as I was writing questions. So I was like, what does that bring to mind to you? The desert is a forbidden zone, and visions penetrate to the heart of that absence.
Yeah. Well, I do believe that the desert is a forbidden zone, and particularly when you look at Westerns, time and time again, you find these really effective Westerns are in a desert setting. And it's that urge of forbidding and foreboding. And that the vision penetrates to the heart of that. What's the last part?
And visions penetrate to the heart of that absence.
Yeah. I think that's a pretty good summation of what Western movies are about, is that you do get to the heart of the absence of anything that's not forbidding. And and it's you alone, out there in the desert. Yeah, that's, I think that nails a lot about it.
All right. And then, the other last question I had was, who are the artists you feel best represent the West in music and art? And who do you, I guess I'm trying to say who represents Europe or who represents Asia. I know it's a broad question, but are there artists that you feel,
gosh, yeah, a whole lot of them. In terms of painters, you have a really broad swath to deal with. You have Remington and Russell, of course, who set the kind of classic standard everybody else plays against. And they were very fine artists themselves, but their Western paintings are kind of created the cliches, if you will, mm-hmm. and Russell's sculptures as well. But I think the artists that I find most intriguing and representative of much of the West are Native American artists, and that starts with the depending on how you count them, the 5 or 7 Kiowa artists, Monroe Satoke being the most famous of them, who came to prominence in Europe when their works were shown there, their watercolors, that really opened a whole other way of looking at the nature of the West, and in fact nature in the West. And Satoke, you get in particularly, he painted a lot under visions of peyote. So you have peyote visionaries in that work. And I think that represents a huge part of the West that a lot of people don't think about. There's so much stuff. I loved the last lithograph series that Andy Warhol did, which were all Westerns. It was John Wayne and American Indian chiefs and stuff like that. Annie Oakley. Those are great lithographs, and I think he captured something elemental in the abstraction of Western iconography. So I don't know how to really answer that except to say that Rembrandt and Russell Remington and Russell kind of set this standard on which a lot of people have reacted, dozens and dozens of people who are very, very fine artists. And then the American Indian artists who kind of grew on their own and came out of, the culture of even ledger book art done by Indians on reservations, where they were given ledger books, like you would keep inventory for a store kinds of ledger, all of that. And what did they use the pages of the ledger books for? They started painting on them, and mostly memories of battles, and the ledger book art of like the Battle of the Little Bighorn is very interesting and is always more accurate than what white artists did when they tried to capture that on with paint. For the filmmakers, there's Peckinpah, there's John Ford, there's a guy I respect a great deal named Bud Boetticher, and that last name is Boetticher, who did a series of films that sort of presaged what Sam Peckinpah did a few years later. But he did this series kind of compressed of low-budget films, all starring Randolph Scott, done for Columbia Pictures over about a 5-year period.